Hello, welcome to the first episode of StackByte, where we break down bite-sized chunks of full-stack development in short videos. Since we're just starting out, I thought we'd take a look at one of my favourite tools, which is Tailwind CSS. Tailwind is a functional CSS library from Adam Wathan and a few others. Functional CSS is basically a method of styling web pages where you include the library and you change the properties on your HTML elements by adding classes to them rather than adding a class name like navbar and then adding properties in the style sheet for that particular class name. This site has some really good examples that you can look through. If you head to the documentation, you can go to components and you can see some example components that Adam and the team have put together. I believe there's also some videos coming out shortly of designing with the Tailwind CSS library. I'll put the link to the site and the examples in the description below. So what we're interested in is how to get this set up in a basic project of our own, and there's a few ways that you can do this. The method that I'm going to show you uses a few different build tools and the command line, which we've got ready to go here in our example project. If you're not familiar with those, don't worry, I'm going to go through things pretty much step by step with you, and we'll look at different options as well. So one of the most basic ways that you can use Tailwind is via the CDN. A CDN stands for a content distribution network, and it basically means that somebody else will host the Tailwind CSS library for yourself. You can include it on your web page, and you can use the classes that it generates and the basic tools that it provides to style things up on your site. You can see that there's a link tag here that you can double click, and then if you open up a basic project, I've just used a JS bin here, you can drop it in and you can see that we can put a paragraph in there that says, got my caps lock on, hello world, and if we use some of Tailwind's styles, you can see that we can change the background color, the text color, the padding, we can change the border radius, the text alignment, things like that. So that's one way of using it. But where the power of Tailwind CSS shines through is its customizability, and to be able to do that, we're going to need to do a few things. So the first thing is to make sure that you have Node.js installed on your system. Node.js is a JavaScript runtime that runs on your computer rather than inside a browser. So if you're a Mac user or a Windows user, head to their download page and their homepage, select the download that you need, use the current build rather than the LTS, get it installed, and to test that it's installed, you can open up your terminal and type node v, and that should give you the version of Node.js that you have installed. And you should also be able to type npm v, and that'll give you the version of npm, which is Node Package Manager, which we're going to use to install Tailwind with. So there's a few ways that Tailwind suggests going about installing it, and one of those is Laravel Mix. Laravel is a PHP framework that I use extensively for a lot of my projects, and Laravel Mix was created to be used with this PHP framework, but you can also use it by itself as well. And Laravel Mix is actually a wrapper around Webpack, which is a tool for loading, combining, transforming CSS, JavaScript, and a bunch more things. Setting it up can be really painful though, and Laravel Mix acts as a middleman between you and Webpack, and it completely simplifies the configuration. Now it's called Laravel Mix and it ships with Laravel, but we can use this anywhere. I use it in WordPress themes, Totemic themes, static sites, and everything in between. It's super easy to set up because we're going to use a bit of copy and paste, and the documentation actually encourages that, so that's a good thing to do. So head to your project folder, and if you don't have one, create one. We're going to drop a few new files there. First, we want to create a blank HTML file, so we'll just use the touch command and we'll call it index.html, and this is just going to be our test page. And if we open this up in our code editor, Visual Studio Code for anybody asking, you can drop a blank HTML layout in there, and what you can actually do if you don't have one is just steal one from JS bin if you can't bother typing it out from scratch like I never can. We'll just call this Tailwind test. So now we have an index.html, and now we're going to open our terminal and cd into the project directory, which you can see I'm already in that directory. So if we list the files that are in here, we can see we've got index.html and script.md, which is the script that I'm reading from right now. And from here, we're going to use npm, which we talked about earlier, which is Node Package Manager. And we're going to use that to install Tailwind and Laravel Mix. So first, type npm init -y, and this will set up another file in your project called package.json. Now this is where it stores information about all the packages that you've installed, like Tailwind and Laravel Mix. And it's where you keep scripts, configuration and things, but we'll talk more about this later. And then you're going to install Tailwind and Laravel Mix at the same time by typing npm install Tailwind CSS space Laravel-mix. And then what we want to do is we want to type --save like this, and that'll tell it to save it to our package.json file so that when we come to install stuff later, it knows what tools it needs to compile our CSS. So run those. See, that can take a while, but once it's done, you should now have, if you inspect your package.json file, and you can do that in your code editor rather than the terminal if you want, you should see that dependencies has Laravel Mix and Tailwind CSS set. So that's good, we're one step closer. So now head back to your terminal, and what we want to do is we want to create a configuration file for Laravel Mix that tells it which files to process and which files to output as a result of those processes. So Laravel Mix's documentation actually gives you a little bit of help here. If you head to documentation and you head to installation, and then there's another section called standalone project. And if you see here, we've already done this, but we also installed Tailwind CSS at the same time. But if you copy and paste this into your terminal, what this should do is copy a Laravel webpack.mix.js config file. Now this is quite overwhelming because all of these things commented out at the bottom are things that you can do with Laravel Mix. So to clean things up a little bit, let's just get rid of all of those because we're going to be copying things mostly from the documentation on Tailwind CSS and the documentation on Laravel Mix. So you can see here it's got a really basic setup. So this is basically saying mix, which is the Laravel Mix object, take some JavaScript from app.js and process it, compile it down into a smaller file, and put it in the dist folder. Now we don't have a dist folder, so what we can do is we can just put // and that basically means use this root folder. And then there's another function, a SASS function. Now SASS is a CSS preprocessor, and you need to compile SASS into CSS. So this is already set up for that, which is good because I use SASS in my projects. And what we want to do is we want to tell it, so we can put this on another line because white space doesn't really mean anything in JavaScript. And what we can do is we can say we'll create another file here called style.scss, and in here we'll just drop some basic CSS. And what we'll say is we'll say // again, which means this directory or relative to this file, process style.scss, and then output it to the same directory, but we're going to rename it. We're going to call it app.css. So you can either leave it blank and it'll use the same file name, or you can give it a specific file name. Now, let's just give this a quick test, but in order to do that, we need to do a bit more copy and pasting. So, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see that it gives you this section here, which is npm scripts. So we want to grab all of this, head back to our code editor, and inside our package.json file, we can see there's already a script section here. Now we can just get rid of that and replace it with the one that we've been given from the Laravel Mix documentation. And just make sure that you've got a comma on this. This has to be valid JavaScript, or has to be valid JSON. So if you get a red line like this in Visual Studio Code, just make sure you've got all the commas in place after pasting. So now what we should be able to do, and what I'm actually going to do in webpack.mix.js, because we're not dealing with JavaScript at all in this tutorial, I'm just going to get rid of that line, and I'm just going to keep that there. So all this file is going to do is take style.scss and turn it into app.css. So if we do npm run dev, which is one of those scripts from our package.json, so any of these scripts can be ran by typing npm run and then the script name, like that. So we've got dev, development, which is just the longer form of dev. We've got watch, which I'll talk about in a minute. And if we head over here, we head back to the terminal and we do npm run dev, and we're getting an error. So one thing that I don't seem to have done is to install a tool that we need called cross-env. So if we just run npm install cross-env and then we run save at the same time, that will install this extra tool that we need to run these scripts. So give that a second, and if we try npm run dev again, we can see that it's run a bit more successfully this time. So Laravel Mix is really clever if you need any extra dependencies, such as a SASS compiler, which I needed because I haven't installed it manually. It'll add things by itself, which is awesome. So there we go, we're finished, so we just need to run mix again, npm run dev, building our modules, and if we go back to Visual Studio Code, we can see that it's created app.css and it's dropped the content of our style.scss in there. So now all we need to do is drop the Tailwind directives into here, and these are basically 3 functions from the Tailwind CSS docs that drop the Tailwind classes and functional classes into our style sheet so we can use them. So let's put them up here above the body declaration, and they might look weird and your editor might say that they're wrong, but just ignore that for now. And then what we need to do in order to get our Webpack and our Laravel mix to convert these into Tailwind CSS is follow the instructions on the documentation for Laravel mix. So you can see that you've got post CSS, or you can use it with less, but what we're using it with is SASS for now. And you just need to add this little options bracket here, but don't forget to copy this, because I keep forgetting to copy this into my Laravel mix. So we put Tailwind CSS equals require Tailwind CSS, head back to the documentation, and we grab this little options block here that we attach to the end of our SASS declaration. And basically what this is doing is saying, before you compile the SASS, use post CSS and compile the Tailwind directives, and including any custom config that you've set up. So let's just give this a quick run and I can show you the difference. So now what we should have in our app.css file is all the Tailwind, and you can see how those 3 directives have turned into all the Tailwind classes that are available through the documentation on the website. So if we head to our index.html and just pop it open here, what we should be able to do is link our style sheet, which is called style app.css, and say that it's a style sheet, and then we should be able to put something in like a paragraph similar to what we did in JSBin earlier, where we say text red 500, text for Excel, and just say hello. So then we'll pop that open in our browser, and that's not working, so let's see why that isn't. working. It's because I use type instead of rel. And there we go, you can see that it's got the dark background color that I added in, which we can actually get rid of now. Run our script again. And then we can open the page up again, and you can see we can use the Tailwind classes. So the next step is to create a config file so that we can customize some of these classes. And not only that, but add in our own colors, our own sizes, our own variants of things. There's a configuration section here that gives you an idea of what a Tailwind config file looks like. And there's a section here that shows you what all the default configuration options are. So you can basically take pieces of this from this GitHub file and you can customize it, you can override things, but first you've got to do a little bit of work to get it set up. So what we'll do is we will actually just open Tailwind's website again, and what we will do is we'll head to the terminal and we will use npx, which is a little tool for running npm scripts that comes with npm, and we'll say npx tailwind init. Now that says it's created a config file for us. So if we head back to our editor, we can see now that there's a tailwind.config.js file in here. And if you open it up, it's pretty bare to start with. And the part that we're kind of concerned with is this theme area. So theme lets you extend things like colors. It lets you extend things like padding, sizes, and things like that. So fonts, border widths, and you can change how the whole framework works from this, really. What we're going to do is just, as an example, we're going to add a custom color in. So in the extend part, so extend allows you to add values in without overriding. So if you were to put a set of colors in here, these would become the only colors available. But if you put it inside the extend, you get all of Tailwind's colors and the ones that you add in. So we're just going to put one in called badass, and that's a greeny color, and it's done BAD-A55, looks like badass. So now we've got this custom sort of green color in here, and we head to our index.html and we say, instead of red, we'll say text badass. And we don't need this 500 because we don't have a bunch of stepped variants. We've just set up one variation of that color for now, so we'll just use that. So text badass, text 4XL, hello. And if we head to our HTML file, if I can find it, there we go. You can see that it's black, and that's because we haven't compiled our Tailwind file yet. So just before I do this again, if you go back to your webpack.mix.js, you can see here that from earlier there was a path to the Tailwind config file in here. Now, if you leave this blank, it'll look for a config file in the same directory, which is kind of what we'd want because it's the simplest way. But if you want to be really verbose about it, you can do the same thing and you can set up a path to it. So tailwind.config.js in the same directory using this // syntax. And if we head back to our terminal and do run dev, builds our modules, and you can see that if we head back to our page, it hasn't done it. Why isn't it? Oh, we didn't save it. So save, run dev. Remember to save things, people. Hello. So from there, what we can also do is introduce variants, and there's a really cool tool for this. Variant generator, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes below, and it's this color shades for Tailwind CSS. So if we put badass in as the name, we'll put the hex code in that we were using, and click generate. What it gives you is basically it's takes your provided code as the middle base color, then generates a bunch, like four darker tones and 4 lighter tones, and gives you the config to add in your file so that it'll work in your. So if we copy and then paste that into here, you can see how now we've got badass 100, badass 200, badass 300, and if we save that and we head back to our HTML page, what we can actually do is we can give the body a class of badass bg badass 400. No, if we said dark, and then badass 300 for the text, and then if we run our dev script again, we can put this into and head to our Tailwind test page, and you can see that the 2 variations are there and in your system, and that's just a really cool way of using it, and it's really, really powerful. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so that you get all our newest videos. I'm hoping to put about 5 or 10 out in the next 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.